Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Comic Corner. Today, I am your host, TJ, aka Fat Thor, and here we do news, reviews, and interviews. And today, I am joined by a very special guest to do an interview, and that is Adam Downing, founder and CEO of Breakthrough Comics, Resolve Comics, and author of Super Dangerous. Adam, how you doing today, my friend? So glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, man. Like I said, so you're the writer of Super Dangerous. I was lucky and you were generous enough to send me the first two issues of this, and I really, really enjoyed this book. But before we get into that, let's take a step back real quick. Just like every other comic book interview channel, we do your typical, comic book origin, let the people know a little bit more about you, but I'll try to make it a little different. There are some things that I thought were really interesting that I want to ask you about.
Mhm.
So, grew up in Baltimore, introduced to comics very early on. I saw you noted Marvel a little bit, mostly Ultimate stuff, but really, what really like kind of captured your imagination was anime and manga. I always mess up saying that, but that's something I don't know much about. So I
Okay.
wanted to ask you, for your early influences, because you can definitely see that come through in the book. What was it about manga that you really gravitated to as opposed to like Western comics? Like, what were those differences that really spoke to you?
Wow, dude, you did some thorough research, man. That's crazy. Um,
I try,
like,
man. I do my best.
right. What is it about manga that really spoke to me? Um, I'll be honest. I'll be super honest. It wasn't even like a ton of manga. For me, it was really just like anime. And I guess I kind of conflate the two sometimes because anime is usually a one-to-one adaptation of the manga, which is the source material. But um, it was really anime for me as far as like the series that I really came up on. Anything that was on Toonami for sure. Like I like most people, Dragon Ball Z was my introduction. And then we had like Rurouni Kenshin and Yu Yu Hakusho. Um, even little shows like Zatch Bell. Like I don't know, whatever would come on Toonami, that was my thing, man. And what was it? Sorry, I'm so bad at like answering the actual question.
Oh, no,
Um,
you're good. Like I said, just like how do you think that influenced your creative style early on? Because again, I can definitely see those influences coming in Super Dangerous.
Facts. That's really what it's like. It completely influenced my writing style. I think if you anybody who reads like any of my stories can see that I kind of have a tendency to set up like a lot of my stories, like my pilots, just like an anime pilot, you know. So I really think it really influenced like the structure of how I write my stories. Like they're all like really shonen-y.
Yeah, I totally agree,
Yeah.
and that's something I want to ask you about later on once we get
Uh,
a little bit more into the details. Because I mean, dude, this issue or the first issue, foot on the gas immediately, and like that's something I absolutely love about it. But something else, so like you said, anime really kind of opened up that like creative thinking in you for sure. And so fast forward a little bit later, you talk about how like you just always had this reactive or overactive imagination, obviously probably from the anime influence, and then everything really clicked for you around like 2016. So I want to ask you about that because I talk to a lot of indie creators and I feel like everybody has that kind of light bulb moment like, "Oh, I'm going to do this." So what was that moment for you? Because I mean, there's where with every indie creator that has that moment, there's a million other people that like never take that jump. So like, what was that moment? Like, why in 2016? What was it that clicked for you?
I think it was like two moments. Like honestly, 2016 was like me coming out of kind of like a dark time. I was in college, like I was going through like mad like depressive spiral, like just that whole thing. And like I really just was watching like a ton of anime. Like I was just like yeah, really like binging and consuming a lot of it, and I ended up just like kind of forming my own ideas and I was like, yo, I want to write a comic or a manga. And I reached out to one of my friends and I was like, yo, you want to do this with me? And he was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But when it came time to like actually start like putting in like little work and like planning and stuff, it kind of never happened. So I guess I would just from then on I would toy around with the idea here and there. And honest to God, I do not even know what happened. Like just something clicked around 2019. I'm trying to think of, any like one event or something that could happen, but I think it was just like
It was
around
just fate.
2019. Yeah, like around 2019, I was kind of like starting to step up and like transition into like I guess adulthood or like the beginnings of my like real adulthood, and like
Mhm.
I was just kind of I guess re-exploring what I wanted to do, and it was like I want to get these stories off. So sometime around like 2019, like I was just like I started working at it again. I was like, I'm not gonna expect anybody else to like help me with this. I'm just gonna go ahead
Mhm.
and like do it on my own. And then a big push, something that gave me a big push was definitely like the pandemic and the shutdown. Like that really
Yeah.
was like prime time for my writing. But
It's
yeah, I
perfect
guess
excuse to sit home and just write all day.
right, right. And I, around that time, like I got my like Marvel Unlimited subscription and my DC, Universe or
Oh
whatever their
yeah.
app subscription was, and I kind of like dug back in a little bit, but I still like, gravitated towards Marvel. As you mentioned before, like I went back through the Ultimate Universe. I started with like Ultimate Spider-Man, like that 99, issue number one.
So good.
Um, and yeah, I loved it. Like Bendis, like, I don't know. I love what he did with that. Like it was such a good like coming of age thing. And
Yeah, I literally had it was like I think the first 3 or 4 issues in like a little like trade paperback, but it was like a
yeah,
paper cover. It wasn't like a, actual trade. And I
really,
literally it's like ripped to all hell cuz I would drag that around in my backpack like every day to school. I loved that run. When I got older and I learned like a lot of people didn't like the that
yeah,
like Spider-Man, I was like, "What? Like you're
shock.
crazy." Yeah, which I've seen more love for it recently, so I think people are coming around, but I mean, what a perfect title and or, kind of time to get back into the, Marvel stuff, and I'm sure while like you said when that moment kind of clicked, all of that is just like I don't know, for lack of a better term, I guess research. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah,
seeing
yeah,
like how panels are laid out, how dialogue boxes work, like how they're, laid out. It's all super important while you're learning all that stuff. And that's the next question I wanted to ask you is that kind of learning process. You actually just mentioned it perfectly yourself. A lot of people are like, yeah, I want to do this, but when the time comes, it's like, it's hard to find people to actually commit and how the way you put it not willing to do the grind, which
yeah.
I think that applies to everybody and everyone in a creative field can relate to that. So again, during that learning process, what I obviously studying up on comics, but what were some other steps that you took to really learning this process? Because like you said yourself, you couldn't rely on someone to tell you, and I've heard other creators like say you can't wait for permission, like you just had to do it.
Dude, 1,000%. And just like coming across people who are like, yo, like I don't know, people who are like scared to just do it. I'm not somebody who is like, I want to get it like really like I have to spend all this time getting it perfect. Like I just want to push it out. Um, but I'm sorry, what was your question again? I hate that I go off on tangents like this.
No, you're good, bro. Like I said, just like so again, like reading comics, obviously like kind of getting back into the medium, but other kind of steps that you took in your learning process to like actually putting a book together. Because as well as I do, having an idea or even like a blueprint is a lot different than fitting it into 24 pages.
100%. I would say like, all right, what I did, and then like what somebody who's trying to like, based off what I know now, like what I would tell somebody who's trying to do it like now. What I did was like, my dad is like into film making and like story writing and stuff like that. So I kind of talked to him about it, and he gave me this recommendation for this book by John Truby called The Anatomy of a Story. And it really broke down like just like the narrative structure, like how to structure your story from beginning to end, like inciting event, like weakness, need, desire, all that stuff, like the premise, everything, right? Um, anybody who ever is like interested in writing but doesn't know where to start, or like especially when it comes to structuring their story, I always like just send them to this book. And like I have like this if anybody's watching this who needs it, like hit me up. I have like this there's a website where like somebody took everything in that book like paragraph by paragraph and they just condensed it into like bullet format, so it's like way more digestible and you can kind of just like get through everything like faster. But that's how I like I use that to plan out my first book, Project Angel, like, and I used it to plan out like the series as a whole, like from a macro kind of like, you know, from beginning to end of the series. But I really like also used it to help me like, you know, write the pilot and all that. And it was just like, yeah, like learning how to write, like learning how to structure. What else? Like, I guess hopping on like social media, like doing my due diligence as far as like the indie like scene and like seeing who are the like big players and like who's, you know, really doing it, how do they do things. And then that was kind of it. I was really just like, other than that, I would really just reverse engineer like my favorite like anime like kind of shows and like, you know, pick out the things that I liked and the things I want to implement. And you know, I have my whole process where like if I, you know, I'll basically from like start to finish, I'll do like a brain dump. I'll like write all that down, like just brain dump on some notes, and then I'll do like a secondary, like I'll go through that, restructure that like from start to finish, and really like emphasize like the pilot, like the beginning, like the first issue, and kind of really work from there out. And then from there, once I have like a really good workable summary that I'm good with, I just start scripting from that, and then I'll edit from that. Or if I'm working with an editor, you know, send that to them, and we'll get it done until it's tight. And then, you know, as far as the art goes, I would tell because people ask about this a lot too. Initially, I went to like Fiverr to look for comic artists and manga artists. I would not recommend Fiverr. I don't think the quality of the artist is generally like good on there. I found out after a while that it's really like Facebook groups. Like Facebook groups are, you know, you're gonna get like really good quality artists that can bring your vision to life. And it's just like, yeah, networking with artists. You know, hey, like I have a 30-page script. I'm gonna be ready to start on X date. Are you good with that? What are your rates? Yada yada. Get that worked out, and then you know we get it illustrated, right? That's what I did, and like honestly, it's kind of what I still do. What I would tell somebody who is like interested in getting into this is like do all that what I just said, but at the exact same time, like concurrent to that, like side by side with that, you need to be working on your marketing plan, and like you need to figure out
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you need to like write up a marketing plan, do research on like how to do that. Like, I guess what like if you want to learn how to write, you know, learn how to write and learn how to market at the same time. And then once you start writing and start doing that, start writing your story, start writing your marketing plan right next to that. And like by the time you're ready to launch, by the time your book is done, you'll be ready to launch or be ready to sell it or market it or however, you know, whatever you want to do with it, right?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you brought that up too, because I mean, that is such like almost equally as important, honestly, about, you know, to writing the book, because, you know, you can have a great book, but getting it in front of people's faces is a whole other game. And shout out to our friends Joey Esposito, Sean Von Gorman over at the Pedestrian. But when I talked to them, you know, Sean Von Gorman, the artist, he was like putting himself in straight jackets and like escaping from them in comic shop. Like it's like anything to get people's attention on the book, right? And that I'm glad you bring that up, because again, that's such an important point. But I gotta ask you know, bringing up art and finding artists, I gotta ask about your collaboration. I'm sorry. I'm gonna apologize right now. I'm probably not gonna say this name right, but Lord Kato Dway. Sorry,
Yeah.
that was awful. But dude, his art is phenomenal, like absolutely crazy. I was like, awestruck at how great this art was. So I love asking people about, their collaborations with their artists and, letterers and stuff. I always am a big proponent of there. It takes a lot of people to make a book come out, and unfortunately not everyone gets the same credit. So again, I would just love to ask you about what's that collaboration process like. Like, are you very descriptive with your scripts of what you send off to him, or do you kind of more so give him the freedom to kind of bring it to life?
Katodwe is yo. So to answer your question, I would say, if I'm being very honest, I'm really not the most descriptive person in my scripts, but like me and Katodwe, it's just like one of those things. Like I think most of the artists that I work with, um, I ended up working with them because like I they like because of that reason. Like I'm doing a horrible job of articulating this, but it's like there's like this synergy, like this synchronicity that we.
Mm-hmm.
So he is one of those people. Same with Kat McHugh. She illustrated Project Angel. He's one of those people that like I will write my script, and although it may not be the most descriptive, and there may be things that I left off of like the page, but I was thinking about them while I was writing it, and then I'll see like when it's time for him to illustrate, he'll have those things. Like it wasn't on there, but it's like we're you know what I mean. We're like right there
Yeah.
with it.
And that's the best type of collaboration. I always, when you can trust the collaborator and just let them cook, that
Yes,
I feel like always produces the best result. So I love how you guys have that kind of synergy going on.
definitely. He's like his stuff is so crazy, man. I saw him. I commissioned him for like, I think it was like a poster for a project that would end up getting scrapped. But um, like what he delivered was just so good. I was like, we got to work on something. And honestly, like a big part of Super Dangerous coming to life was just me needing to write something for Katodwe, like to illustrate. You know?
Yeah, like I said, his art is phenomenal, and I think it just complements all the tones that you're balancing so beautifully, especially like we just talked about that kind of anime and manga influence in the book. Just translates it so well. Like I wouldn't even say it's like necessarily one style. So I had to ask you about it. Give him his flowers because absolutely amazing. But really, really quickly before we get into Super Dangerous, because we're already kind of talking about it, but if I can take us on just a little bit of a tangent, I do want to talk quickly about Project Angel, also Offspring, and then I also want to ask, so you come out with these two titles, that's under the Breakthrough Comics banner. And then you decide to do the Resolve Comics, which you explain as like more of a your image, if you would, like separate self-contained stories, whereas Breakthrough is this interconnected universe. So again, I want to get into Super Dangerous, but really quickly with that, what was the thought process but yeah, behind splitting those up and like making two different banners for your comics?
Yeah, I mean, once again, dude, kudos to you. Your research is very thorough. I don't think I've ever had an interview with somebody who did this much.
Well,
Like,
thank you, man. Well, I mean, again, like you guys, writers, you do a lot of podcasts and stuff. So I try to make it a little different. So I really appreciate that.
nice, dude. So I'll say honestly, like, the reason for Resolve Comics coming into like its inception was my series, The Toys Who Walk. Just it's about like a group of sentient action figures who like have to navigate in the outside world and like survive while doing so. And like I don't know. I wanted to get on it immediately. I wanted to publish it and like start working on it, but I didn't want to publish it under Breakthrough Comics because, as you know, it's a connected universe, and I just didn't want to connect it to that universe. Like we had a whole big overarching plan, it just didn't fit in there. Um, so that was really like that was why I came up with Resolve Comics. That's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I'm a sucker for a good interconnected universe. Like you were just saying, you're kind of a Marvel guy. I am a self-admitted MCU shill. I love the Marvel stuff, but like anything that's like interconnected, I love that. So I love how you separated the two and like kind of It's like, oh, if you're looking for this, here's where you go. It makes it very clear of like what you're looking for. And especially, people discovering it for the first time. I think that's really nice to have the distinction between the two. But super dangerous. We're talking about these two different banners. Super dangerous is under the Resolve Comics banner, so that is its own kind of self-contained world. And let's get right into it. So we are following Joss Sanders, who is basically like the most powerful person in the world, and he can fly. He's got super strength. He can do all, like, pretty much anything you could think a superhero would do. And something I really love about the series, we talked about this very briefly, but it opens up just with foot on the gas and doesn't really let up. And so I want to ask you, when you were, getting this kind of script together, getting this whole idea together, and plus as you move forward, how do you balance like knowing when to hit the gas and when to, maybe let off a little bit?
That's a great question. I think that basically that occurs, or like, I think I can tell. I use the structure. Like, I use how I'm going to structure the story. I adhere to the outline and how I plotted everything. But also, like, honestly, the series never really does let up off the gas. From being honest, like,
Good.
every thing, but I mean, that's also, like, that was the point with Super Dangerous. Like, Super Dangerous, especially like Super Dangerous #1 was written to like hook people. Like, that was like a really big priority when writing that issue. It was like, I need something exciting that hooks people, that catches their attention and keeps them there. And that's yeah. So I don't know, honestly. I think it's, I just
Comes naturally.
yeah, just, we stick to the plan, and it
Mhm.
kind of, yeah, happens naturally.
See, it's just natural talent, man. That just shows how good you are. But like I said, I love how this starts out. And speaking of hitting the gas early on, another thing I really love, I mean, about the series in general, but especially this first issue, is Ja is like taking on real issues. Like, dude solves like world peace in like a day. And I love that. I love that stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the kicky, punchy, fighty monsters, all that good stuff. But it's like that's something I think about a lot. It's like, okay, these people are so powerful. Like, why not like fix healthcare or something? You know what I mean? Like something that actually helps people when there's not an alien invasion.
Right.
And I feel like that kind of and you can correct me if I'm off base here, but I feel like that kind of goes with one of the themes I got from this book is the kind of accepting the consequences of power, because we see that obviously this doing all of this good does not result in something very great for Ja, which I don't really want to spoil too much. But so again, where not where, but like when you were thinking of this concept and you decided like, oh, I don't want to just do monsters and supervillains and stuff. What was the thought process behind that and how it relates to Ja's the theme that you're trying to get through?
As far as like the consequences of power, I think, especially after issue #2, you kind of see that, like, where Ja has so much power that, like, the consequences
Definitely.
actions do have like rippling effects. Um, not only like throughout his family, but also like throughout the world. I don't think it's gonna be too much of a spoiler to say that, like, Ja's gonna have to grapple with like humanity kind of being afraid of him. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it, being like, yeah, like the consequences of being a walking like deterrent, and that isolation that comes with that. Yeah.
Well, we see again, I don't want to get too much into it because I really
Right.
want people to discover it for themselves. But we see, even the people closest to him experience that as well. And like you said, I think that's just a very interesting angle to go at a superhero. Typically it's everybody loves them. Like they're which I mean, I'm sure a lot, like again, you end world peace. I'm sure you got a couple people that are rooting for you, but there's also again those consequences that come from that. And before we I got another thing to relate to this consequence kind of theme, but speaking of themes, you're balancing a lot of them in this book, which is
Mhm.
another thing I really enjoy. I mean, it's very superhero-esque, like it's probably because I've just been reading this nonstop lately, but kind of very invincible as like young hero comes into his own. But we also kind of get a little medieval fantasy, some supernatural elements, even a little bit of sci-fi going on. So again, kind of when we're talking about, putting the gas on, how do you go about like balancing those things? Is that something that you're conscious of while writing, or again, does that just kind of the story goes where the story goes?
Definitely. It's a little, I would say it's definitely a little bit of both, but like so initially it was kind of just like back to just like I want to write like it needs to be I need to write something cool that hooks people and like just kind of taking I don't know everything from like other stories that I've written or just like stuff that I'm into and just throwing it all and like cooking it up, but also like these different themes like these like the Zilla like sorceress supreme and um even Strider like everything in these first two issues like I'm articulating this really badly but it's like it all ties into like stuff later down the line. I'll say
Yeah,
everybody gets
breadcrumbs.
right like everybody's gonna like Zila she's gonna get her own arc and like she's gonna have to like basically like coming back at let me stop let me not spoil that but like yeah I I I I guess I'd say I am aware of all this, and I do want to like take the time throughout the series to explore like all these
Mhm.
different themes. And like I will say that like moving forward, probably past like Loki, it starts in issue 4 because issue 4 the narrative is issue number 4 is the first issue in this series where the narrative is completely like not focused on Ja. It's on a completely different character. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
right, and like that's gonna start like that happens in issue number 4, and then past issue number 5, the narrative is going to start like splitting in, per issue, like being split between Ja and like other characters that pop out in this world.
Okay, I really like that. I love getting like the different perspectives of, the situation depending on who the character is. And speaking of perspectives, I got to ask you about Zila, the necromancer queen. So again, that kind of gets into the supernatural element of this book. Ja meets her, she's trapped in this crazy sword. Basically, they make a deal that, they'll work together to kind of help each other is what I'll say. But so Necromancer Queen already kind of is like, I don't know, it sounds a little bad to me.
Right,
And she wields chaos magic, which we all know is, pretty bad news if in the right hands.
right.
So to me, I really got was Zella, which I'm sure we're gonna, like you just said, we're gonna be seeing a lot more of her and like her perspective on things. But to me, I really got like it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I felt like you were using her as like kind of a commentary on the perspective of good and evil. So, like, obviously, she's the necromancer queen. Like, you would assume she's evil, and we get the little backstory with her sister, but then we learn, well, she was in prison for. So it's like, is that really right? Also, so again, how are you playing with this whole perspective of good and evil? And again, it sounds like we're going to be getting a lot more of that as we branch out in these later issues.
Dude, I mean, yeah, 1,000%. You're really touching on some good stuff here. I would I would say yes. She like right now, like as far as issue number 1, or like at like the point in time that issue number 1 takes place, like Zila at this point is like she's like a reformed ex-con. She's like somebody who did something really bad and then like she's been inside for like 30, 40 years and she's like very mellowed out
It's
now.
like, I'm cool now. Like,
Yeah,
I just want to get out of here.
yeah. So um and so I mean this is I'll this isn't like too big of a spoiler, but maybe it is. I don't know. But like a lot of her arc is gonna be about like kind of like similar to that, like basically a reformed ex-con like re-entering society. Um and also like her like like her twin, like the leader of the order of like the Lumine, like that whole thing, like that order of Lumine, that's gonna be like a big thing. And like
Which
there's
I feel like
you're
they're
right.
sus, dude. Like, again,
Yeah.
like it's like they're like, oh, they're so perfect and good. It's like, what's really going on there, right? And I love that little parallel you threw in there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I mean, yeah, we're gonna dig into that. They did some nasty shit, and we're gonna explore that. So
I don't doubt it at all. Like I said, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I don't know if I, which I'll also say too, I don't know if I trust Zila either. Like she's not giving away the whole story for sure. I mean, you don't
yeah,
just spend 3,000 years in a ancient blood necromancy sword, and as much as she tries, that's hard to get past.
right.
But speaking of, like you just said, so issue 4, we're going to start, expanding these perspectives. And you've also mentioned before that in your mind, this series could reach easily 100 issues.
Yeah.
So is when you say that, is that like, oh, I want to keep writing it for 100 issues, or do you have like kind of a at least loosely plan of like where you want to end, like, oh, we start here, we get here, and I want to end here? Or are you just, again, kind of letting the story take you where it goes, and once you're not having fun with it, it's going to be done?
True. I think it's a little bit of both. Like I do have some loose like I have this like starting point. I have like this. I don't know if I would call it a midpoint. It's like I guess close to like mid end where like there are three like big bads that like are gonna give Ja a lot of trouble, and it's like they're gonna bring the trauma and all that. And all right, just to answer your question, yes, I do. I do have an idea of where it's gonna end. And I think like the trouble for me is when like I said, like when I'm exploring these other characters' narratives, and like we get like kind of on the street level, and like where we have all these other people that we're trying to like fill out their arcs. It's
Mhm.
gonna be like kind of managing that and not letting that like extend it too long, I guess.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
find that helps, having a kind of at least loose idea of the end goal, or is it more freeing sometimes to maybe, put that on the back burner, like you said, to kind of explore other things?
Um, I think it helps. I definitely think
Mhm.
it helps. Like I write all my scripts according to like this overarching summary that I have planned out. Um, like I said, with my process, like I brain dump everything that can include like, beginning, middle, and end of the series, and then, whatever chunks I need to fashion the first issue, the second issue, I'll kind of just build from there. But like, yeah, it definitely helps for me. Like I definitely need to write to a plan. Like I need to have like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Everything has to lead, I mean, you want to make sure everything is cohesive to your ultimate, point, what you want to say to the book. So I'm a
yeah,
big proponent in the kind of blueprint, and I think, again, that really follows through with all these things we're talking about expanding these perspectives, discussing these, these kind of very important topics of discussion. Again, like, what does power mean? What can you do with power? What are the consequences of that? What is, perspectives on good and evil? And I cannot wait to get into all that. And I wanted to ask you too. I am also, again, obviously, I'm a super nerd. I read pretty much everything, but I'm also a real big fantasy nerd. I love like world building. And again, Ja lives in a very interesting world. And obviously, it's very similar to our own. But again, we have like the two different, you talk about how the world kind of operates on two different kinds of magic. So you say that you had this big summary that you kind of follow. Do you have like kind of a world, I guess, Bible, or you would call it, or whatever, like, how the world works? Or again, is it just kind of filling in the pieces where you need it? So it's like, I want this necromancer queen, so the world has to have magic. Or
right,
do you have like this whole like the universe was born, you know what I mean, like
yeah,
crazy?
yeah. I do. Um, I do have like it's not written down, but I do have like the kind of systems like plotted out. Because it's like two different types of magic, and then there's other like types of powers and energies and stuff like that, and like I don't know. Yeah, So I don't have it organized. I don't have it written down, but I do have. I kind of just keep track of all that in my head. I would
Yeah,
say.
have like a kind of rough idea of how the world works, but you're not necessarily like drawing maps and stuff like that.
We're like constantly just. And I think this is where like the overactive imagination and like the ADD and stuff like kind of helps because it's like I'm constantly like daydreaming and like just running.
Yeah.
Film style like the storylines in my head and like I'm thinking about like things that are occurring like towards the middle the end of the series and like it really helps to just day to day like if there are any loose ends like just keep thinking about it and it helps to like
Mhm.
kind of tie them up.
Yeah, just constantly working the concept. I mean, I'm the same way as you. I'm constantly daydreaming, thinking about stuff, even though I'm not writing comics, so it's
Yeah.
probably not as productive as yours. But yeah, I mean, I think that's essential. And like you said, especially like if you're running into trouble with something, like I'm sure visualizing it out really helps kind of get through that. And one other question I want to ask you too, specifically about Ja, because we're talking about like powers and like the kind of power scale and all that. And I mean, especially obviously, we have the big two, Marvel, DC. But I mean, even besides that, there's just so many comic books, and especially obviously superhero comic books are kind of the prominent genre. So what did you want to give Ja that you maybe think is lacking in other heroes, or like what did you want Ja to really? How did you want him to stand out among all the other new superheroes, teenage superheroes that come out? What is it about Ja that you think is, special?
Ooh. I think it is how he handles situations. I've been told like his reactions and things like that are a lot more realistic and raw. Um, so I think you get that, and like it's not a lot of like the superhero like like the classic like posturing like oh that's bad and stand for justice and stuff like that. It's like nah man, you took my family. I'm about to fuck y'all up, bro. Like stop playing with me. Like stuff like that. I guess I think
Yeah.
he's more relatable to like people.
Yeah, it's like more realistic reactions to obviously insane circumstances. And again, I think it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier is consequences. Like again,
Yes.
yeah, you could save a city, but there's probably still a lot of people that died, and like there's sometimes consequences that come from that. So you already alluded to this, but we kind of see that turn at the end of issue 2. So I don't want to spoil too much, but before we get out of here, can you maybe give us any little tease? I mean, I love our boy Ja. I don't think he'll be a villain. I'm not saying that, but can you maybe get into just a little bit of this kind of dilemma, or I guess moral dilemma we're going to see from Ja moving forward?
A lot of Ja's dilemmas, yeah, it is gonna stem from like him being the most powerful person on earth. And it like a lot of his struggles are gonna be between like his duty it's gonna be between like the isolation that he kind of feels like his isolation from the rest of humanity because people are afraid of him. He's like a walking, deterrent. And like versus like and also like juggling the expectations from those same people who fear him. Like when shit goes all the way south, it's like where is Josh Sanders? And I'm not trying to. I like to spoil shit. I really have a problem with spoiling. Like like Josh's not gonna be on Earth the entire time. Like after issue 5, he's gonna start like hop. He's gonna go to some fantastical places, and it's like
Mhm.
things are like that's why like I said the narrative doesn't it doesn't just stay with him. Like we're gonna get back to what's going on Earth at a street level, and like things are still gonna like time still is gonna move. Like it doesn't stop after he leaves Earth. So it's like when things get out of hand, and it's like where is Josh Sanders? Like what is he doing? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just gonna go between like the isolation and then like balancing like the expectations of people who already kind of hate and fear him. Um,
Damn, I love that. I really love that. That's like a perspective I haven't really considered. But I mean, yeah, imagine you're the most powerful person. I mean, but you can't do everything, right? So it's like something bad happens, you're automatically kind of blamed, right? Like, damn, I love that. That's dope.
yeah. And he's gonna get his little blue suit invisible arc. Like he's gonna get his little dark moments, but I don't think he's going to like go full like villain, you know.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that's something that I really enjoyed about the book, and something that works to the book's credit is, again, this kind of more realistic, uh, I don't even necessarily want to say realistic take, because we're still in this kind of fantastical setting, but just realistic reactions. And again, like, because a lot of times, like, yeah, this, everyone just kind of assumes like it's normal, right? So I really love the angle that you're taking with, again, showing real consequences, tackling real issues that we really do see in real life. Like, I wish Ja was out here and could just give a, I mean, especially with what's going on right now, we need Ja more than ever. But
Right.
before we get out of here, dude, again, I really enjoyed this book. I urge everybody, if you have the chance, go pick it up, go read it. So I want to throw it off to you, my friend. Plug yourself. Where can people find the book? Where can people read the book? I'll also be throwing all that kind of stuff in the description underneath this video, so y'all can go under there and click that. But I'll again throw it off to you, my friend. Plug yourself. Where can people find you? Where can they read Super Dangerous?
But I mean, first and foremost, like for anybody who's watching this, if you want to check out Super Dangerous, you can check out issue number 1 for free, like in its entirety at Global Comics. Just search up Super Dangerous, Resolve Comics, you'll find us. And outside of that, I think Global Comics should link to socials, but if not, like I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, Breakthrough Comics, BREAKTHRU, and for Instagram, it's all that comics like spelled the normal way. On Twitter, it's like BREAKTHRU comics with an X, and then on Facebook, it's just like Breakthrough Comics, like the normal way. Uh, and yeah, outside of that, like check the Kickstarter, search up, Kickstarter, Super Dangerous, issue number 2. We have a campaign going for like 2 more days. It ends on March 15th. But I have the rewards up, like still active past the end of the campaign. So you can, buy stuff through there, or just, hit any of the socials I just mentioned and hit the link in the bio. You can go to my website. Everything should be available there as well. So, we're all over the place.
Beautiful. So that means all y'all out there watching and listening, you have no excuse. Again, if anyone watches our show regularly, y'all know I read a lot of comics, and I genuinely really enjoyed this one. And I really think there's something in there for everyone to like, especially if you like superheroes. And again, Ja is a new kind of superhero that I really love. And I think everyone will really love him. So, Adam, I cannot thank you enough for coming down here and telling us all about it. And we have to do this again especially once we get to issue 4, because I need to know what's happening. So once we start branching out, we definitely got to reconvene and do this again. But once again, everyone, I'll say it one more time before we get out of here. Go back Super Dangerous on Kickstarter. Get your hands on it any way you can, because it is really great. Hit Adam up. Make sure to follow him on everything, all the socials. And obviously, you can find us as well on all of these social networks, Agents of Fandom, Agents Fandom, I think, on Twitter, on TikTok and Twitter. Agentsoffandom.com. We have some great articles. We have some really great Daredevil stuff coming out right now. And then also we have basically a show for everything you're watching on TV. We got everything. And then you can catch us, obviously, the Comic Corner every Thursday for all of our reviews and more interviews. Adam, again, I can't thank you enough for being here. And everybody watching and listening, we will see you guys all next time.